Welcome to another episode of the Couples Academy Show. Today's topic, before you end your marriage, separate. Join us now.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hope all is well. It's another great day, and we're here to continue in a conversation that we've started last week. We were talking about rethinking divorce, and we're kind of still in that topic because I think that there's so many details involved in such a thought. It's such a major decision. And one of the things that we always caution people to do is to never make a permanent decision in a temporary situation. A lot of times for couples, the future looks bleak. There doesn't seem to be any hope for the future. Your situation may seem helpless. And at that moment, you want to give up, cave in, quit, throw in the towel because you don't see the possibility of what it can be. But we believe that if you just push pause for a second and allow yourself to process these thoughts and process these feelings, you can position yourself for something a lot better than your current situation.
Yeah, the truth is that you just don't know what you don't know. And so when things start falling apart in your relationship, you do what you've seen, you do what you've heard, right? You just go with what you always have known to do. So the first thought is to divorce, to leave the marriage, to go hang out with your friend until things blow over, to shut down, to move into different spaces inside your home. And what's been happening in recent years is that there has been a new phenomenon that has raised up, and it's called controlled separation. And a controlled separation takes kind of the ball out of your court and puts it in the hand of somebody who is trained to handle such a thing. I think a lot of times, instead of when we kind of operate out of our own insight, we will do things rashly, right? We're upset, we're angry, and we just do things. There's no rules, there's no boundaries, there's nothing that says, hey, these are the rules to this engagement. And now it opens the door for a lot more hurt when nobody knows what the rules are.
And so here we are. We are in the month of October. Statistically, the majority of divorces that take place in any point inside of a year are in the month of December and in the month of January. December because people want a fresh start, so they want to put things to rest and start the year brand new, or they do it in January as the beginning of something new. And so this is about the time where people are having these conversations. And so we would encourage you that if you haven't gone to a counselor, if you haven't spoken to a third party that could properly guide you through that conversation, don't rush, right? Don't rush to divorce. It should not be the first step. It should be the absolute last step. And in between there, we're talking about separation. Now, many of you, to Danielle's point, who separate, you separate with no rules. You separate in haste. You separate because of an emotional reaction, and you just want out and you just want to breathe. And what happens is, though you think the marriage may be over, things change all the time. Couples come back together all the time. Now when you come back, there's other hurts because of what was done during that separation.
And I know that you always tell men when they've messed up and they call, you tell them, do not leave your home. Talk a little bit about why they should not just leave.
Yeah, well, the position is this, and never leave your post. You know, any of you who have served in military before, you know that one of your responsibilities is to guard your post. That if you remove yourself from your post, that's a major, major, major offense, because you may be responsible for something that is critically important to the survival of your team, to the survival or the advancement of the movement of the military. Likewise, inside your home is your post. So you never just leave. We're talking about people who just get frustrated and just want to go. People who get into arguments and get up and just leave and they're gone for 2-3 days. No, never leave your post, because you're creating a vulnerability in your household and you're not providing the level of protection to your family that they need. But when we're talking about a controlled separation, we're talking about two people who come together and they're working with someone to guide them through a process that creates checks and balances. There's a system of accountability. There are clear rules and expectations. And the purpose of a controlled separation is not to divorce, but to have the needed space necessary to clear your mind, to get your thoughts together, to become the best version of yourself so that you can come back into a household in a healthy relationship.
Right, and a lot of times the reason why somebody might do this is because one person wants out and the other person does not. And so instead of just calling it quits and you have the back and forth of trying to want to work it out, now this controlled separation is here to actually see if there's anything that we could do to move forward. We know people that live in different places in the home. Mm-hmm. It's a separation that way, or who have moved out and moved to a friend's house. That's a separation. However, what makes the difference between a controlled separation and you just separating on your own is a mutual agreement to do certain things, and we want to go through those agreements that could potentially help you to separate and then ultimately get back together.
Before we do that, let's just say good morning to the people. Stephen, good morning. Asai,
hey
good morning.
Good morning.
Anne, Melanie, Renard, Dee Dee, Latasha, Corliss, good morning. Colleen, Raya from South Australia. Darlene, listen, we're glad that you're tuning in. We're hoping you're getting something out of this. This is an important topic. We would ask that you share it. We would ask that you share it with your community, because there are people who are going through this situation right now. They're in the valley of indecision and don't know what to do. So let's jump into the steps of a controlled separation. Once again, purpose is to separate in order to come back together.
Yeah, and you don't want to do this on your own, because like we said before, it's just an opportunity for more hurt to come into the marriage, because number one, you never put any guidelines around it, so who knows when this separation will end. So number one, set a limit to the amount of time of your separation. It should be 3 to 6 months. It should not go over 6 months unless you come back together and renegotiate. Because what ends up happening when you separate, especially when you do it on your own, is that you're separated. You're living two separate lives. You're not checking in with each other because you never put those boundaries in place. And this can go on and on. This could go on for years in some cases.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to that time period, when we've kind of navigated couples through it, we typically do 2 to 3 months. So it's saying 3 to 6. I think 6 can be a little bit too long, because if you have 6 months, you're like, well, I got time. I'll get started in a month or two. I just want to enjoy. I just want to relax. But if you have 3 months, like it says, start between 3 to 6. So we do the lesser amount. Wow, 90 days, I have to have focus, I have to have intentionality, I'm here for an objective, I'm here because I'm trying to get something done. And so now we have to make sure that all the steps are in place and we're working towards it, because we want results quicker. Just think about if you bought a product and you got a 30-day guarantee. Well, if you've got a 30-day guarantee, you're looking at that calendar like, okay, 26 more days, 25 more days. You're conscious of it. If you had a 90-day guarantee, you probably wouldn't even think about that anymore, because you have so much time. It's just like, oh, whatever. So the more time you have in a separation, to me, can be counterproductive. So we err on the side of about 3, possibly 4 months.
Okay. Neither spouse will file for divorce. Now, nobody wants to be blindsided and receive a divorce notice in the mail, and we were supposed to be in a controlled separation, right? So up front, you're making the decision to put all of that on pause. There's going to be no divorce. We're going to work through whatever the time period is that we've established.
That's a very good point, because just a few days ago, working with a couple, trying to restore the relationship, the husband was caught off guard because in the mail, he received his divorce papers. In that session, it didn't go too well.
Wow.
And so this is what we're talking about full disclosure, full transparency, not leaving a false impression and then popping something on your partner that they didn't prepare for. They feel sideswiped. And so it's never, ever good to do that. Heather had a question. She said, good morning. Is there a way to do a controlled separation after your partner has already left? The answer is yes. A lot of times what we do is we help couples course correct. So they're in a normal separation, and then we have these sessions and put some parameters around that separation to move them back into a healthy environment. So yes.
So one spouse moves out of the home, and this should be the one that actually has more finances to sustain themselves. And how we negotiate that, we actually help negotiate that by talking to you about your finances and who's relying on one another. Sometimes you have a spouse that is 100% relying on the other's finances, and so you have to work those things out. This is why this gets costly. You know, you think about separating and divorce in general, it gets costly because now you have to figure out where the person's gonna live, and if the finances are not there, now you have to put somebody else out because you have to be on somebody else's couch. But these are the things that have to happen.
And in the financial conversation, think about it. It's challenging when you're married and you're in a good place. Think about when you're not in a good place and now you have to talk finances. And so you can get into all the details of, okay, so if you're leaving and now logistically you're in another location and you have your own expenses, so now do I have to ask you every time I need something? When the kids need something, do I need to come and knock on your door or pick up the phone and have to ask and then you got to transfer? Or is there a certain amount set aside that covers all the bills, that covers all the expenses? And so when you are seething in your emotion, it's hard to have any productive conversations regarding finances, which is a huge issue. And this is why we encourage you to contact Couples Academy, because we guide you through these guidelines in a healthy way so that you can hear and receive from one another.
That takes us to the next one, which is finances are split during the separation. And that basically is the same thing. It's just a discussion about how we're going to manage our finances while we're apart and making sure that all the needs are met, the kids are taken care of. Which takes us to the next one, focus on the welfare of the children. So you're separating. It's like a baby step that you don't want to end up having to take the big step to divorce. But it honestly does give you a picture of what you might have to deal with long term in divorce. Think about that. The fact that you actually have to set up visitation if you are separate. You do not want the children to be neglected, left out, or involved in any way.
Yeah, and then it's also very confusing for the children.
It is.
Because, wait a minute, why is daddy not here or why is mommy not here? We've known many women who have left because they needed their own sanity and space. Not that they don't care about the children, but depending upon the circumstances of that household, they needed to leave. But it leaves the children wondering, is it my fault? Is it something that I did? And so we talk about this all the time. The best way for you to love your children is through your spouse. And what we mean by that is this. If you're not in a good place and you've made the decision, I'm going to be the best father I can be. Danielle says, I'm going to be the best mother I can be. And your love goes vertically down to the children. While they feel your individual love, they don't necessarily feel as if they're in a loving environment because they don't see love here. They see hatred, they see vitriol, they see disgust, they see dissension. And so they don't feel safe or comfortable in that environment. So thinking about the welfare of the children is critically important. And that's why we say you need to protect your children from your marriage, because your children have a front row seat to your life and they will mirror what has been modeled for them.
Yeah. You know, also what comes up is how confidential will the separation be? So this speaks to who are we telling? Who are we not telling? You know, of course there's going to be those close confidants that you let them know this is what's going on, because those are the people that you see on a regular basis. They're the ones that would come to your house and wonder where you're at. Right? But do we tell our parents? Do we tell the pastor? Right? These are the conversations that also come up.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. Because you can operate in either extreme and it not be good. So one extreme is I'm going to keep the secret. So my spouse left and I'm protecting my spouse's reputation by not letting people know. And what that does is now that spouse can live two lives, right? They can, especially if it's not a controlled separation, if they just leave. But if it's a controlled separation, I think what's best, we talk about how it takes a village to raise a child. Likewise, it takes a community to keep a marriage intact. Who is a part of your inner core? So your small inner core, which is there to keep you in check, to keep you on the right path, to challenge you when you need to be challenged, they are the ones that need to be right.
If you have that. Some folks don't have that, unfortunately. Yeah.
But we should all have a small community of people that we can go to for help, for guidance, for insight. And we're not talking about broadcasting it in front of the world. We're not talking about making statements on social media and letting everybody you know who you get on the phone with, even the people at the gas station and at the supermarket. You don't want to do all of that.
But you do want to be held accountable.
You do want to be held accountable. Absolutely.
So next we talk about how much time we're going to spend together. And that's something that if you know us, you have to have your work day and your play day. And so that's something that has to be discussed because you're separate. right? And you're not going to see each other all week. You're going to work, you're coming and going. There may have been a breach of trust already, right? And so making sure that you schedule those days to come together is important.
A controlled separation, once again, is for the purpose of becoming the best you so that you can have the best relationship. Now, if you focus just on yourself and you spend no time working on that relationship, you can wind up outgrowing each other and there's nothing that draws you back together. So there's got to be specific times set up throughout the course of that week where you connect. Now think about it. You have 168 hours in a week. All we're requesting is that you dedicate 2 minimum of 168 to your relationship. So one of those hours, whatever day that's going to be, consistently every single week, is your work day. That's the day where you come together and begin working on that relationship as guided by a particular counselor. And then your play day is a minimum of an hour, can be more, hopefully, where you're trying to reconnect. You're trying to communicate with relative ease. You're trying to see what was the secret, what was the sauce that brought us together in the first place, to rekindle that. And by you doing both consistently, it creates momentum in that relationship to move you forward in a positive direction.
Next, we're going to talk about, is there going to be intimacy? That is a huge one,
Yes.
right? Are we going to have sex during the separation? How do we handle that?
The answer is absolutely no. Because for many people, when you engage in sex, and we've heard many couples say this, you know, once we had sex, we thought that everything was all right. And because when you're engaging in sex and coming together, it's a chemical release that's happening, right? And so it makes you feel as if it's all good now, we're in love now, everything's okay now. But what you have just done is you have mistaken an emotional feeling in the moment for a healthy foundation which does not exist in your relationship. And so if I know there's a yearning and a craving to be connected with you, now I have more motivation to get things together because I do want to sexually and emotionally connect with you. And the separation means we're not just separate in terms of being in 2 physical houses, but everything is normal as can be. No, we're separating and we should be able to feel it. Like, I shouldn't be too comfortable in my separation. If I'm too comfortable and I'm kicking up my feet, I'm like, boom, it's good, it's all good. 3 months will turn into 6, 6 will turn into 12, and before you know it.
Yeah, I mean, you should have some hunger. And this is probably why it's so important to have that accountability. Because,
Absolutely.
you know, when you're out there and you're away, if you have had a struggle of infidelity, that's going to be a concern for the other spouse. The other spouse that knows that you have a yearning, you have an issue with stepping out, is going to feel a little nervous about withholding, right?
Yeah.
So how are we going to make that person feel at peace with withholding when they know that their spouse is out there potentially having a desire?
Well, this is what a controlled separation is about. This is not a normal separation. Let me tell you something. We talk to couples who are separate all the time. Just got a phone call yesterday. They're separated, and she has a boyfriend, he has a girlfriend, excuse me.
Wow.
And so they're doing their own thing, living with different people. That's what you would do in a worldly separation when there's no plan to come back together.
Separate, so we're not together.
We're not
Right.
together. I'm gonna do what I want to do. You do you, I'm gonna do me. But if it's a controlled separation, this is why we have to go back to the why. Why are you doing it? What is the purpose? What is the intent? If it's for the restoration of the relationship, we can't connect emotionally, socially, or sexually with other people. That is not what this is for. This is controlled with the purpose of restoring the relationship. So no, if you have to go, first of all, Danielle, how many couples do you know that are not having sex anyway?
Exactly.
They haven't had sex for weeks, for months, some upwards of a year or more. So now that we're separate, we can't hold out a couple more months to not have sex.
Right.
It should help to build up that natural desire and intensity because you're focusing on the intimacy of that relationship.
Yeah.
So no sex.
It's just like a sex fast, right? You're fasting from each other completely, and so the sex fast has to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Question came in from Tamika Love. What if your spouse's core people are having affairs and his family members are either divorced or not even married? That's a very good question because we said it takes a community to keep a marriage intact. Well, sometimes you have to recreate your community, a healthy community. We know that we are the total or the sum total of our 5 closest friends or 5 closest associates. We talked about on yesterday's show that one of the reasons a person may consider divorce is because people in their circumference, in their surroundings are getting divorced. So if my friends aren't happy, they're separated, they're divorced, there's something called peer pressure. You become a product of your environment. And so if you want a better life, you create a different environment that is conducive for your personal growth and your marital restoration.
Wow, that's powerful. And then finally, after you come to the conclusion of your separation, you come back together to discuss, are we continuing with this separation, or do we need more time, or are we going to continue at all? And so the agreement up front was that we would not throw in the towel beforehand, right? We're going to come back together and discuss whether or not we're ready to come back together and be in the same household, or if we're splitting.
And you'll know whether you're on track by what you do weekly. If you're coming to, so we talk about the 2 days a week you need to connect, your work day, your play day, but you also need to be with a counselor that's guiding you through a process. Now, if you're doing those things regularly, you'll be able to see if we're on track or if we're off track. So by the time you reach that 3-month mark, if you will, you'll clearly know whether we're ready to move back in, whether we'll need more time, because you would have figured that out in the process anyway.
Wouldn't you? I mean, you think about it, it would ease all the fighting, right? Because you're fighting in each other's face, but now that you're separate and you have a chance to think and clear your head, it actually puts you in a position where you can actually feel this thing out and say, you know what, this is what it would really be like without this person, right? So now you have a clearer perspective, and you do know all the way through if this is working or if this is somebody that you really want to be with.
And to that point, as humans, we're both rational and emotional. And oftentimes when you're preparing to separate and you're considering divorce, even not to say that you're not thinking it through, you're definitely thinking it through, but your thoughts are emotionalized. And if you have emotionalized thoughts, like if you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you're sad, if you're depressed, that will influence the thoughts that you think.
Sure.
And so we want to make sure that you're operating from a healthy place, because if you're unhealthy, you're going to make decisions that do not support you or benefit you in that relationship. If you now take the time to pause and to separate and to properly think through and to pray and to meditate and to have wise counsel and a community of support, those feelings that you initially had, maybe they begin to shift, and the thoughts that you were thinking, they begin to shift. You're now operating from a healthier place, and you can make decisions that make sense.
Powerful.
So never operate in haste, because it won't work. Now, there was a couple who was in the same situation that we're talking about. They were at their wits' end. They didn't know what to do, and then they sought Couples Academy for help. Let's take a quick look at their testimonial to give you some inspiration.
Hi, my name is Angie, and I came to know Danielle through Hassani. My husband and I were going through some stuff that we just needed a neutral third party, someone to help us get through it, and I did a quick Google search. I really wanted a relationship expert versus just like your fly-by-night counselor. And so when I did that search, I found Hassani, and after meeting with him a couple of times, he suggested that I meet with Danielle. And I am so super glad that I did. I'll try to keep it together. But working with Danielle has been nothing short of amazing. If y'all have ever seen the movie with Taraji P. Henson and what men want, or I think is what it's called, and she can read men's thoughts. That's literally Danielle, but with people. She's just awesome, and because she's an Enneagram expert, and when you work with her, you'll learn what that means. But basically, it is her being able to understand like your core personality type, and her knowing that she's really able to work with people individually and help them work through things. She's not judgmental, like, at all. She's not a typical counselor in the sense of, oh, tell me how that makes you feel. She just really helps you like work things out, and she's phenomenal. And when I first heard her and Danielle and Hassani say, you'll make quantum leaps. Like there's this thing they say, quantum leaps in your relationship and as a person, everything. To be honest, I was like, yeah, okay, dude. But if you're really honestly working with them and doing the steps that they're suggesting that you do and following them, you're going to learn so much. And I just cannot thank Danielle enough for the difference that she's made in my life in just like the short amount of time that I've known her. So from the bottom of my heart, Danielle, thank you. And for those of you listening, if you have a chance to work with Danielle, like don't even think about it twice, honestly. She gets people. She knows how to help you be the best version of yourself possible, which for me is a really strong core value that I hold dear. And so finding someone who's willing to help you work through that and believes in that same idea and philosophy is just amazing. And so again, thank you, Danielle, for being who you are.
You did that.
And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all
He's
about.
trying to get me to cry. See, he knows my heart goes out to my girls who I work with, and she is a phenomenal example of somebody who is teachable and knows how to follow the instructions, right?
Yeah.
So that you can acquire the results that you want, that you say that you want. So thank you for that.
And people often ask, well, do you guys do individual counseling? And the answer is absolutely yes, because the reality is, and we talk about this all the time, there's focusing on your marriage, but then you have to focus on yourself as an individual, particularly during a controlled separation or when you're contemplating divorce. Sometimes you need to get one-on-one with somebody to kind of talk through your issues, to process things. And so that's what this is about. So we work with both couples and individuals, whether you're married, whether you're divorced, no matter what your relational state of affairs may be, we are here to help you. So we hope that this conversation was helpful today, because many of you right now are right in the valley of decision as to what you're going to do. You're at the crossroads, and we'd rather you take the time to process, to think, to get around people with sound advice and sound wisdom, to contact us at couplesacademy.org before you make a permanent decision that you may not be happy with. As we said before, upwards of 5 years after the divorce, so many people have regretted it. So many people who thought, you know what, it's the pathway to happiness, and it certainly wasn't. They're still in the same type of pain with other pains compounded on top of that. That's not the path that we want you to choose.
Yeah.
So take the time, think it through, and pray. And when you do that, you'll get a result that you never thought was possible. Guys, hope you had a great day today with us, and we will see you in the morning. Take care.
Can't bring us down, can't nothing bring us down. Our love is too high, bring us down, can't nothing bring us down. Bring us down, can't nothing bring us down. Our love is